We will begin this hour, the fourth hour of Morning Joe, with that breaking economic news. The August jobs report was released moments ago, showing that the U.S. added just 22,000 jobs last month, much, much less than the 75,000 that economists expected. The unemployment rate also saw a slight increase to 4.3%. This, of course, the first jobs report released since President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics last month, after that report showed not just a weak level of job creation, but also a dramatic reductions in previous month's totals. To help us sift through this, let's bring in NBC News senior business analyst, as well as the host of the 11th Hour, Stephanie Ruhle, and chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Peter Baker. Our thanks to you both. Steph, we're starting with you. There's no way to sugarcoat this. This jobs report is brutal.
It's not good. What is it showing us? What we know. The economy is slowing. It does not matter what Donald Trump tells us. It doesn't matter what Howard Lutnick, what he wants to tell us. The economy is slowing. So Donald Trump and the market are going to get what they want, a rate cut. But they want a rate cut when things are steady. We're going to get a rate cut because the economy is slowing. That is the reality that we're living in. And Howard Lutnick can say, oh, you're going to like the number 6 months from now. When you bring in a Trump ally and cook the books, it doesn't change reality. Things cost more, and the tariffs are making business more difficult in the United States of America. That's our reality.
Yeah, and since President Trump's Liberation Day with those tariffs, we've seen supposed to be a promised boom of manufacturing jobs. That hasn't happened. Those jobs have disappeared.
Exactly. And one could say, yes, but the stock market is doing so well. Remember, when you look at the stock market right now, it's just 7 mega super tech companies that are overweighted, the kind of companies that aren't impacted by tariffs, that aren't impacted by inflation. But look under the hood. Talk to the likes of a John Deere that's laying people off. Talk to Walmart that's warned the president that prices are going up. Talk to Nike, who says this is going to cost them a huge amount of money. Why? Because we don't make shirts and shoes and sneakers in the United States of America. So real companies that manufacture real things and sell products to real Americans are saying this is difficult. And you can see it because they're either laying people off or they're pausing in hiring.
So during an event at the White House last night, President Trump told reporters there that the U.S. won't see, quote, the real numbers, meaning real job numbers, real signs of economic growth for at least another year.
I don't know. They come out tomorrow, but the real numbers that I'm talking about are going to be whatever it is, but will be in a year from now when these monstrous, huge, beautiful places, they're palaces of genius. And when they start opening up, you're seeing, I think you'll see job numbers that are going to be absolutely incredible. You're going to see job numbers like our country has never seen before.
Peter Baker, we certainly know that President Trump likes to assert his own reality. And when he doesn't like statistics, he just ignores them, or in the case of last month, fires the person at BLS who's in charge of compiling them, of releasing them. This is a really damaging report that would seemingly, taken from a political lens, really undercuts Trump's central argument that he's a good steward of the economy.
Well, look, this is the kind of report that gets you fired, right? It's literally documenting the same trends that we saw last month that he said were rigged. And now this post-firing report suggests that the trend lines that were so problematic a month ago, in fact, are still there.
The Trump economy is sputtering. We learned this morning that job growth in the past 3 months has all but ended. There were just 22,000 new jobs created last month, and new revised data showed the economy actually lost jobs in June, the first time that's happened since President Trump's first term, back when most of us were still in isolation during COVID. And unemployment ticked up to 4.3%, the highest in nearly 4 years. An economy that's stalling out is bad news for any president, but particularly for one who got back into the White House in large part because of what voters saw as his economic acumen. When President Trump didn't like last month's jobs report, he fired the head of the agency that compiles it. This morning, he placed the blame on his economic nemesis, the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. Jerome, too late. Powell should have lowered rates long ago. As usual, he's too late. I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters here. Anne Marie Horton of Bloomberg, CNN's Matt Egan, Abby Livingston of Puck, and Ested Herndon of the New York Times. Matt, take us through some of the numbers and what they mean.
Yeah, Dana, look, this was another brutal jobs report, and this really suggests that after years of historic resilience, the job market is facing some serious trouble right now. I mean, hiring has basically stalled out to almost nothing, right? Just 22,000 jobs added during the month of August. That is a fraction of what economists were expecting. It's crazy to think that not even a year ago, back in December, the economy was adding 300,000+ jobs. Now we're, not even 10% of that. And as you noted, we saw that June was revised lower to show that for the first time since COVID, the U.S. economy actually lost jobs. So that ends this nearly 5-year streak of uninterrupted job growth. That was the second longest streak in American history. It's now over. And then the unemployment rate, so you mentioned that, ticking up from 4.2% to 4.3%. That's not high per se, but it is the highest since late 2021. And Fed Chair Powell, he has said that that's the number one indicator that he's looking at for evidence of weakness in this job market. I think that we shouldn't rule out the possibility that this is just a slow patch and the economy can rebound from here, right? I mean, job market's been so resilient for so long, but clearly this is another major challenge, and I think the warning signs in the economy are really piling up.
Yeah, and stand by, because I do want to get back to what you just mentioned on the Fed and interest rates. Instead, let's talk politics. Yeah. And I mean, yes, the president likes to say that immigration was a big issue. I'm sure it was. The culture wars, definitely. But we know the biggest reason, and it was the fact that people were hearing from President Biden that the numbers are good, let's just wait, but people didn't feel that way. Now it's the numbers that aren't looking good either.
Exactly. It's a mirror image from kind of 2021 when we had Democrats at that time kind of telling people, don't look at the numbers, don't kind of believe what's in front of you. You kind of hear that from Trump now. This is what we had kind of warned about all through the summer, the prospect that his kind of self-imposed economic crisis, tariffs driving that, could pose not just uncertainty, but a downward job market and really reverse what has been Trump's number one strength coming into this. But I also think you got to add in the big, beautiful bill with this, right? And it speaks to, I think, is a kind of hypocrisy at the heart of Trump's second term. For all the talk about his growth among working class voters, his growth among working class voters of color, what we have seen in terms of economic reality here is a bill that largely amounts to a wealth transfer, a removal of benefits from SNAP and Medicaid. And I think that's the reason why you see some of those poll numbers, particularly on the economy, reversing among the very groups that delivered Trump the White House last year.
Abby?
You know, Trump immediately pivoted to the Fed and Jerome Powell, but when I talk to Republican sources, they're all worried about tariffs, and the full brunt of that has not been felt yet. Some say we may not feel that. But politically speaking, the question I have is, does this impact the gubernatorial elections in November in New Jersey and Virginia? But moreover, when does this hit next year, if it does, and how does that affect the midterms? And,
you know, there was such hullabaloo, to use a word that probably shouldn't be used very much, Anne-Marie, over the fact that the last month, when the jobs report came out and the president wasn't happy about it, he got rid of the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics that compiles them. And so the Commerce Secretary was on this morning, interestingly, before we all knew what the jobs numbers were, and was once again going after BLS, even though the guy that they removed is no longer there.
They're just bent against the president's success. They're rooting against America and against Donald Trump, and that's got to end. So he can't replace somebody, 2 weeks ago, and you expect fundamental change. But what you will get is an agency that's on side.
Well, there isn't fundamental change yet at BLS. The commissioner actually doesn't even have control over the data. The data is collected by statisticians. They sit in different units. They're almost walled off. And then once the press release is written, it's sent to the commissioner, and the commissioner then sends it off to the White House and the CEA. The one issue that Wall Street has in terms of credibility, and this is the gold standard, the jobs report, the U.S. jobs report is the gold standards of economic data. The one issue that Wall Street has is the fact that when you go out and these statisticians are looking for these surveys, the response rate has been so low for months. That is why we saw massive revisions last year. That is why we are seeing massive revisions now, to this point where June actually you have a negative print, negative 13,000. That is a huge deal for this economy and for this Federal Reserve. So the problem is that they're not getting 100% of the data when that first print comes out. And this is why you have those revisions. When you talk about, though, the new BLS commissioner, I think only this week his nomination was sent to the Hill. He hasn't even had a hearing yet. And many are still questioning, actually, if he's going to be able to get through Senate confirmation.
Right, exactly. And then there's all of that. But then there's the underlying argument that you're still hearing from the administration, which is to blame the people who are compiling the numbers as opposed to the actual policies. Or maybe it's just the pendulum of the economy.
Yeah, the argument there, it's an interesting one. It would kind of be like if you had an NFL owner, right, whose team just lost big, and instead of changing the quarterback or the play calling or firing the head coach, they go out and fire the scoreboard operator, right? I mean, you might not like the score, but there's probably some bigger issues out there, and shooting the messenger is probably not going to fix anything. But to get back to something we were discussing earlier about the self-imposed nature of some of this, let's look at manufacturing, right? So tariffs, they're supposed to be propping up manufacturing. And what we're actually seeing is that U.S. manufacturing lost another 12,000 jobs in August. This is not an anomaly. It's the fourth straight month of job loss. It's kind of ironic here because obviously historically high tariffs are supposed to make American manufacturing jobs great again. And I think at best, we're seeing that's off to a very slow start. But at worst, economists are telling me that all of this chaos on the trade front, the tariffs are up and down, they're paused, they're restarted. It's just paralyzing manufacturers, and some of them are shedding jobs.
You're witnessing here is the Trump economy in turmoil. And it's his fault. It's his fault. It's okay. It's one of the arguments you see in politics, even in American politics, where the American president is often the most powerful person in the world, is that even they only have so much of an effect on whether the economy is good or bad, right? There's only so much you can do, right? Generally, there are global forces and cyclical forces and factors like pandemics and whatnot that sort of happen and it make it really hard to have a good economy. Or in some cases, like the new technology comes out that makes it really hard to have a bad economy, right? Especially over a 4 to 8 year period. Some presidents are lucky, some are unlucky. And while some presidents are revolutionary for their success, like FDR, who did the New Deal and whatnot, and is regarded as one of the greatest American presidents for a reason, by and large, presidents have good or bad economies based less on their policy and more on global effects. Now, you could argue that some presidents' policies have been better than others. For example, Biden's policies are better. But one thing you got to remember is with Donald Trump, this is him. He was warned that he had a good economy coming in. He didn't deserve to be president again, in my view. That the Biden-Harris economy, while far from perfect, was trending in the right direction, and that Trump was coming into office, and everyone said to him, "Look, Donald, all you need to do is nothing. Just do nothing. And you will take credit for the Biden-Harris economy, which is getting better and better and better." And lo and behold, he did stuff. And the tariffs and how he did the tariffs have created this massive crisis. In addition to his federal government cuts, which have decimated small businesses in many communities too. Donald Trump has created a recession economy all on his own. That is impressive for how dumb it is.